Hey there. So, this is my coming full circle. This is my service learning journey in summary for this whole semester. And I've got a pretty big story to tell you and only about 15 minutes to tell it in, so I'm going to get right to it. So, a brief agenda for what I'm going to go through before we get rolling. I'm going to tell you things about who am I as a person, because that's going to come in really important context later into the second half of this presentation. And then I'm going to get into my service learning organization of choice, which was Buc-ee's Food Pantry. I'm going to talk to you about that program and kind of how that program works, how it operates on the daily, its operation agents, all those sorts of things. And then I'm going to get into my sort of preconceived notions and sort of how I felt about the topic before I went in versus the actual reality and how those two things kind of met together. And then I'm going to talk to you about sort of my reflections as I left the organization, sort of my takeaways from it, my personal opinions on how it could work just a little bit better. And then the second half of the presentation, I had a pretty big aha moment this semester that kind of locked a lot of pieces together in just a lot of the different circles that I'm in my communities. About how service can be better integrated into my life. So I'm going to get into a lot of that. And then at the very end, I'm going to give you a few minutes of a visual aid session because I've got a lot of pictures to show you to help me kind of tell the story of that second half of the presentation. So without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, so who am I? On a personal level, I consider myself to be a scientist. I consider myself to be a naturalist, a teacher, and then I call myself a schemer because I'm always planning, I'm always thinking about ways to make things happen. I just call myself a schemer. What I do in my daily life, I am a geoscience major. I am the part-time campus recycling coordinator. I run around on campus of an evening picking up trash and recycling around campus while everybody's off campus. I am the student community garden manager. The campus actually has a student-run community garden for the students on campus to have access to. And then I am the president of an organization, a newly founded organization called the Appalachian Self-Reliance Coalition, which deals with self-reliance principles, forestry, current issues, anything that helps you with self-reliance principles. And all those things do come into important context later. Okay, so what is the pantry? So Buc-ee's Food Pantry is a student welfare program founded on campus, and it is designed to offer aid in any way it possibly can to any student that needs it. In the words of the coordinator who runs it, the needs assessment coordinator says that it's not just food, water, and toiletry items. They also, in a pinch, they can offer aid to a student in terms of utility help, rent help, financial help outside of just food and toiletry items. If a student needs help paying their rent, if their lights are about to get cut off, they can come to her as the needs assessment coordinator. She can build a case for these students to hopefully get some help that they need. At the moment, the pantry is completely a university initiative. It originally started though with it was a university program that was funded in part by Sodexo, which is the company, the hospitality company that runs the dining services on campus, and AmeriCorps, which is a third-party organization which helps staff nonprofit organizations. So Sodexo was paying half of the coordinator's stipend, and then AmeriCorps was paying the other half, and then the university provided the facilities and the manager for the pantry. So originally it was the manager, a guy named Chuck, and it was Amy who is the needs assessment coordinator. And Amy was originally an AmeriCorps employee until now, as of this semester, now that the pantry is completely a university initiative, it is Amy is the needs assessment coordinator and Chuck is the he is the overseeing manager of the program. So who does this pantry serve? Particularly anybody, which I know sounds kind of oxymoronical. they will serve any student, any faculty, any staff, anyone even that is considered in the ETSU community. If you are a family member of a staff, if you are associated with, I believe, the health building up on Hill in Buck Ridge, if you are associated any way at all with the campus, they are not going to turn you away. And even if you are not a member of this campus, if they are not in a position to help you, they will get you connected with community resources that will help you. Okay, so story time. I have had approximately a year and a half, actually, of working with the pantry and with Amy in some sort of periphery. I started actually when I took on my position as the manager of the community garden. Amy came up to try to grow some produce for her program, and we kind of bonded ever since. So I've always had a bit of a periphery of what she did until this semester and a little bit into the summer did I really get an understanding of, the nitty-gritty of helping someone in food insecurity. I thought I understood, I thought that I knew, and then I got in and realized that there's just some things that I didn't know. And it really comes down to I didn't fully understand. It's more than just lifting boxes. It's more than just handing somebody a can of peas. It's listening to them for just a few minutes as you're handing them their box of food and picking up as much information as you possibly can. Learning to listen to the intent in between the sentences, so that you can kind of build a picture of the need situation of these individuals. Because often these people, when they come in, they're a little too ashamed to ask to begin with. So when they do finally begin to open just a little bit, after you've built the rapport, after they've come in 3 or 4 times, and you've poured on the friendliness, you've been sweet as sugar, and they finally feel they can be a little more comfortable in the environment, then you can start to piece together how else might these people be needing help. Because there's a lot of people that need help in ways that you really don't know until you talk to them. One of the biggest examples I have of this is I have had some pretty close ties with some international students on campus. Some people coming over to study from Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Kenya, and their situation is a lot more dire than they will actually tell you. Specifically in terms of their visas and their policies, they are not in a good position to take care of themselves while they're here. They're not allowed to work over 20 hours a week. They're not allowed to work off campus. Just various different circumstances that keep them in a situation where they can't afford much. So you have to really be able to, in the pantry setting, build familiarity, build comfortability, and make someone feel welcome. And then you have to get in there and cruise around and kind of figure out how you can help them in ways that they don't even know to ask for, which is the real art behind what Amy and the Food Pantry does in the day. So my takeaways were all of those interpersonal skills. It was a really, really cool experience to see that happening on the daily. The program itself, though, has a lot of good and a lot of bad. And when I say I wouldn't change a thing, I do have some caveats. So the good things that happen there, the atmosphere and community and the help that you get, the connections that Amy can help you make, I wouldn't change a bit of it. It's a really beautiful situation to just see. It's small enough to feel familial, and you will really get person-to-person help. The bad on the other side is this organization could use a little more funding. It could use a little more staffing. The pantry itself often has, the pantry is often low on food. These pictures show you clearly. I mean, the fridges sometimes go empty because it's completely donation based. There are instances in which Chuck, the manager, will order large pallets of non-perishables from places like Second Harvest, but otherwise they just kind of survive on donations. So that would be the one thing I change, is find a way to get them help in having more food on hand, having more, full-time volunteers to help, that sort of thing. Because the atmosphere is great, but they are beginning to be outpaced by the need. Okay, story time again. So my big aha moment this semester was, so I told you earlier, I have been involved in different capacity throughout the past couple of years with the pantry and with Amy as the community garden manager. I took a moment and just realized that all of the different communities and places that I am involved in, all of these places can work together. I used to be an employee with Sodexo. I am a geoscience major learning natural sciences. I am the garden manager. I work with the Department of Sustainability, and I am the president of this club, which is working on self-reliance, self-sustainability principles. All of these things can work together in a ways bigger than what I had been doing already. And I'll elaborate a little more on that in the special needs, or in the visual aid, sorry. But essentially, all of these organizations can feed off of each other. Sodexo already works with Buc-ee's Food Pantry. Buc-ee's Food Pantry already works with the community garden. But, sustainability and, the geoscience department, both of these are places where we can find ways to help people do what they're doing more efficiently, more impactfully, and then combining the garden, for example, with the ASC, the Appalachian Self-Reliance Coalition. There are ways to increase the educational outreach of all of these places. And hopefully as I get into the visual aids, you'll see how these stories kind of tie together a little better. So that weaving that net was one of the big ahas, but then I started thinking about how to put it into work. So if I think about it, I go through all of these different places, I spend all these hours there a week, and then I see all of these people. All of these people are people I could be impacting to be moving in the same direction. So if I decide that I want to move towards a goal to help, and say I want to help make the pantry bigger, if I find out they need more volunteers, I see over 100 people a week. 100 different people a week. If I could get even a percentage of those people involved, then that's major impact. That's the power that I have in this situation. Okay, so I am going to move into my visual aids. Thank you for watching the presentation. Okay, so in my visual aids section, I'm hoping that these pictures are going to help me tell the story visually of what I was telling you in the second half of the presentation. So my biggest aha moment for this entire semester was there are ways in my other communities outside of Buc-ee's Food Pantry that I could be helping Buc-ee's Food Pantry do its job better. And that's really been my biggest perspective shift, was if I am in 5 communities and one of them is in need of some help, if one of them is struggling, how can I pull from my other 4 communities to help that one? In this instance, I've got some pretty impactful ways. Buc-ee's Food Pantry, for example, they have 3 major issues. One is a lack of volunteers. They're constantly looking for more people. They often have empty shelves and empty fridges. And then they also deal a lot with food waste. And this right here is my first way that I can impact them, which is, in my garden, I'm constantly teaching people how to grow food, how to provide for themselves, and when you have an excess and an abundance, how to preserve it for later use. And this right here is an example of food that they couldn't use because they got in a box of apples that were bruised and kind of smashed, and they could not use them to just give to a student as apples. But I could take that box home and make it into applesauce. So I did, and I made applesauce and I took it back down there, and they could give that away to students. So I took something that was unusable and made it reusable. They also run into a lot of foods that can't happen with, like bread. If they get bread in, it's going to potentially go moldy within 4 to 5 days. If it does that before they can get rid of it, then what happens? It either goes on the trash, or in this case, it went to an employee of the university has a pig farm. So they took it and gave it to their pigs. So that's eliminating food waste. In taking this idea, I grew it a little further because I just decided, I'm going to grow more than I can ever take in myself anyway, so I'm just going to start growing for the food pantry. And I did, and I started growing even more. And then I decided that I was just going to tell my gardeners, hey, as you're growing, if you have any abundance whatsoever, let's take it down here to this food pantry. Let's help them keep their shelves from being empty. So we started growing that. My gardeners started helping on this. And we started getting small harvests of produce, which we would take down there and help feed students. And it, as you can see, has worked out pretty well. And tying into that, the education component is the real impact, in my opinion. So I teach classes out of this garden and out of the Appalachian Self-Reliance Coalition. We are teaching classes to people about how to be self-reliant, how to grow for themselves, provide for themselves, and how to teach other people how to grow and provide for themselves. So in this instance, we're teaching a beekeeping class, but I just thought it was a very good picture to show. If you get one person in front of a group of 20, you can really make impact there. So these are just a few ways in which I think it's my job to get these people involved. And with this last picture here, I think it's a good picture to show, when you look at it at the start, it's this really beautiful thing, but if you look in the back, we got a lot of work to do. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed my visual aids. Thanks for watching.